Hi, Laura. We're so happy to have you here today.
Hi,
How are you?
Carrie. Great to be here. I'm doing well.
Great, good. So I'm wondering if you could just start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and about what you do.
Yeah. So my full name is Laura Kline-Taylor Rothel. Kline-Taylor is my hyphenated maiden name, so I carry both of my parents' names with me, and Rothel is my husband's name. Um, my personal work over the last 5, 6 years has really directed me into this relationship with myself that has at its foundation the awareness of who I am. And so I like to maybe unconventionally introduce myself first by saying that I embody the qualities of serenity, heart, zeal, joy, and life force. And so then when I present myself also as a women's empowerment coach or a mother and a wife, I intentionally define myself first as me with those essential qualities instead of just the ones that you or anyone else may associate with entrepreneur or mother or coach and wife. So that's my practice as well with relating to my children. I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, and I practice that with my husband, who I've been with for 16 years, married for 8, and with my clients who are women who are interested in powerful motherhood and in fulfilling careers. So my
Okay,
fear stand for every human is that we know who we are as unique beings, in addition to how we are defined by the roles that we have.
I love
Um,
that. I think
yeah,
that's so important to actually
yeah.
to move away from these like labels. I am a mother, I'm a coach, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm this, but like actually
Mhm.
a value driven way of identification. That's really beautiful.
Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah.
Laura, what cycle day are you on today?
Today is cycle day 24.
Okay, great.
So I'm 2 to 4 days away from menstruation. Um,
Okay,
and
all right.
that'll vary, but it's pretty predictable at this point.
Yeah. All right, great. Is this a part of your cycle that you feel at home in?
It is. I'm edgier and my communication is a little bit more direct at this time, but I'm very discerning. I have tons of physical energy and I'm doing lots of nesting and preparation.
Mhm.
And I've always loved the calm before the storm, or the excuse to sort of hunker down and be with myself and my environment. So it is a comfortable place for me.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
just for our listeners, the cycle day that Laura's on is her inner fall. And inner fall is what I ask about specifically if you're comfortable in this one because it's something that a lot of women struggle with. This what society calls PMS. I don't even like to use that label for it because it has such a bad rap, and I don't
Yeah.
align with that bad rap. So for me, it's one of my parts of my cycle that I feel the most at home in, and I get the most done, and I can really just like embody the authority in that season for myself.
Me too. I didn't always love this time. It was the time to prepare for that, you know, terror that terrible time. But now it's really fun. So it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Let's see here. Uh, on that kind of note of seasons and where you're at home, is there one season in particular or one hormonal phase? Because I know from your beautiful ebook that you sent me that you like to
Mhm.
look at menstrual cycle awareness through that lens of both like, okay, this is our inner season, which is more of like the psycho spiritual approach to it, but this is the hormonal phase, and I love that. I align with it because I think both are really important to understand. Is there one particular season or hormonal phase, however you want to share with us, that you feel the most at home in?
Yeah, it's really it's right now. It's inner autumn, right where I
Okay.
am now, post ovulation and pre-menstruation.
Mhm.
So energetically, I think I'm grateful for the opportunity to come down from what has been a really high energy, high sort of visibility place for me. I tend to feel willing to, but also a little bit vulnerable in the visibility and the energy of being so outward and so social and so connected. So, like I mentioned earlier, this is the moment where, I know the rest is ahead of me and I can start preparing for it. And my cycle supports that sort of coming down and getting everybody ready for my retreat.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I was just kind of looking to the future over the next month for myself and realizing that my next inner autumn, inner fall, I'm actually going to be on vacation. And I was thinking,
Ooh.
what a beautiful time to be on vacation.
Hmm.
To step away from that daily stress, which is what I try to do, kind of gear down in that season, anyways. Although yeah, inner fall for me is something that I end up tying up a lot of loose ends in that
Hmm.
time, which is always nice. I feel like I get a lot done.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, okay, great. So inner autumn is when you feel the most at home. Very beautiful there. Um, can you or would you be comfortable sharing with us your menarche story?
I would, sure. Yeah. Um, so I don't know if this is a particularly exciting story so much as um, for me, I was about 12 and my mother had prepared me for getting my period by giving me a bunch of books.
Mhm.
And I had paid attention in health class. The book that is most fresh in my mind that I read was Judy Blume's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Okay, yeah.
Um, and I remember feeling like, okay, my mom's excited. This is clearly something special for her, but I didn't fully understand why it was special for me. I remember
Mhm.
feeling a bit resentment or resistant maybe is the better term for um, what I sensed was an added responsibility that would be mine now. Um, so I had the awareness that there was more to manage, that
Mhm.
that extra responsibility nobody presented it this way, but my what I learned was that this would be heavy and maybe burdensome. And
Mm,
now I was responsible not only for the logistics of, having my pads and getting to the bathroom on time, and caring for my cramps if I had them, but also to keep this secret. And even if it was
mm.
special, to sort of manage the special secret of my period.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that weekend, I had a sleepover with a girlfriend who had also just gotten her period, almost to the day for the first time, but we didn't share it with each other. And
Oh, wow.
later, our mothers, who were also friends, sort of delighted in sharing with us that the news that each of their daughters had both begun their periods, but neither of us 12-year-olds quite knew, like, do we talk about this? Do we not talk about
Mhm.
this? So it felt special, sort of like sisterhood. Oh, this friend of mine also had her period, and yet it still held that heaviness of secrecy. Um, and I
Yeah.
know, yeah, the book that I referenced, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, sort of presents this way of being about a bunch of things for that age, like
Mm.
sort of if we have an attraction to boys, that's natural, but
Keep it
keep it
secret. Yeah.
keep
Well,
it secret
that's
or
what I was
temper it
gonna ask you,
down.
like, how
Yeah,
specifically, because I remember reading that book, but it's very fuzzy.
yeah,
It was a long time ago.
yeah.
How specifically does that book deal with menstruation? Can you recall that?
I was thinking back about my story, preparing for this, and wanted also to reread the book because I know there's something
Yes.
juicy in there for me.
Yeah.
But I know it focuses on boys, bras, and periods. And so
Mhm.
this whole sense that, we have this little something extra, right? We're gonna have extra body parts. We were gonna
Oh,
have extra body fluid, and we might have extra large emotions to manage.
mhm.
Um, and that somehow that extra was not normal or not the default, and that the
Right.
default was male or masculine. So that
Yeah.
created this like separateness or marginalness in just my understanding of the world, that
That's
was
what I'm
pretty
calling our
implicit.
biodivergent nature as women. Like,
Ah.
we are like, yeah, biodivergent nature. That's from society, right? Divergent from what? From the patriarchy, from the male organization of society. We are biodivergent beings.
How dare we?
Yeah, exactly. One thing I keep hearing you say, which is
Mm,
actually, you're saying it's kind of this ho-hum story, but it's not, in the
mm,
sense that you keep using the word manage around this,
yeah.
right? You use it like 4 times, I think. And that I've never really heard anyone talk about menarche in terms of the management responsibilities. But like
Mm.
as a middle-aged woman, that makes a lot of sense to me. And a
Yeah.
follow-up question always to the menarche story is like, what were you dealing with then, or what was present for you then that's still present for you now? Do you think it's in this management or something else?
It's exactly that. Um,
Okay.
and I hadn't caught the frequency of the word that I use, but I am still working with that. Somehow there is something for me to be responsible for as a woman, whether it's male's attraction to a woman
Mhm.
or male's inconvenience by the largeness of a female cyclical experience. Um, like I remember a middle school boyfriend telling me how cool I was for being able to ride my bike with him to the next town while I was on my period and acting like it was no big deal. And
Mhm.
I made that like a mental note to self. That's the way to be.
Mm.
Manage it in advance so that you can be cool and just like the boys and
Right.
ride your bike to the next town if that's what's happening. Don't be a girl on her period.
Yeah. And also interesting that the boy had that insight as well. That
Yep.
it was enough of a thing for you. Like in a way, it's honoring that, right? Like, because that's the one thing we don't get a lot of is like men honoring the fact that it is something that you're acting like you don't have it because, right? So there's this hidden sense there. There's so much secrecy around this, like shame in terms of
Yeah,
talking about it.
totally. I feel like now my work is unlearning that
Mhm.
and accepting my womanhood as one of the normal human experiences out there, right? One of them,
Right.
and
Yeah.
not just the divergent one. So whether that's just for my own personal benefit or so I can model that for my daughter and my son and my husband even.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I know, Laura, that you have worked and you do work with a lot of mothers and mothers to be.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit on how, parents, be it mothers or mothers and fathers, whatever, can help to support their children to have an empowered, not just menarche experience, but menstruality experience.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I want to say is that I believe that understanding our menstrual cycles should not be reserved for managing our fertility alone,
Love
because
that.
that would center something other than sex or motherhood as a
Right.
viable reason for a woman to care for her body and kind of relish in her feminine power. So if parents can think, okay, this is a natural part of living, like you would support your child with, understanding how their food allergy is going to impact their daily living and that they have to check, are
Mhm.
there nuts, or is there an EpiPen that they need to train somebody how to use? Or, hey, you're going to school, it's a new environment. Here's how to prepare. That
Yeah.
same kind of like foreshadowing and preparation can really support a girl um, to sort of chart her cycle once it's established itself. And then she can know her body and read it just as she reads her body through like sleepiness cues or
Mhm.
hunger cues. And
I
that's
love
as natural as eating and sleeping instead of this thing to, you know, stress about or have shame about on the side.
Yeah. No, that's so important. Like I so align with that. This need for families as a family to help not I'm not even going to use the word help, to make space for their daughters' cycles.
Mm,
for
totally.
for
Make
their
space.
the little bleeding people in the household, and making their cycle matter to them,
Yeah.
and have a place in the family planning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I think it's the family's responsibility as much as the girl or woman herself to align with the cycle, even just from an awareness standpoint.
Yeah.
Because I ask my husband and my daughter, well, my daughter's 5, so she can only do so much, but she does. I ask them to consider where I am in my cycle. They don't always remember to, but to just be mindful of it. Are we grocery shopping? And is it mommy's inner winter? Does she want more iron? Or whatever I've communicated to them is important to me at that cycle. And
Yeah.
to consider like the activities we're doing and where I might be, or how we're talking to each other and how much space is needed for navigating the emotions and the hormonal experience of that.
Yeah, I love that. And living in that kind of cycle alignment is such a rich daily practice, right? No matter how long it is that you're doing this, as long as you are bleeding and continuing to build the cycle awareness. This is what I see in my own life. The depths of it, no end, really. It's
Yeah.
a constant thing in my life to like aligning the life of my family, professional commitments, romantic commitments with my husband, parenting commitments with my children, social commitments, like all of like that alignment is a daily practice for me of like trying to kind of walk that balance, honor myself with all of these ways that we interact through our relationships and
Me
work.
too. I think it's also like being willing to change plans if they don't
Mhm.
fit with my cycle energy or my mood at that time. Because it's not cookie cutter or a template, right? It's a
Totally. Yeah.
guide, it's a framework, but it'll shift every cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let's see here. Speaking of this kind of alignment and what you just said, being willing to change plans, which I think is a really great little sound bite there of be
Mm,
willing to change your plans for your cycle. That alone is so important.
yeah.
How does this map onto your business and the way that you run your business?
Well, so there's where I want to be and what I intend for my business, and it's a practice over a perfect. But
Mhm.
my ideal is to meet with my clients 3 weeks out of every month and to have a month of downtime so that I cannot be in my most introverted, lowest energy point when I'm intending to show up for them and support them. Um, so sometimes that works perfectly and then sometimes it doesn't. So my business is, I have complete flexibility around it as a entrepreneur. So I try to announce launches or publish blog posts or new content that I've created during my inner summer, and then
Mhm.
do the writing and the editing, or the growth strategy work during my more discerning times when I'm going to have a little bit more of a critical eye during the premenstruum phase. And then I try to give myself off when I'm menstruating. And I tell my clients what I'm doing as often as it feels appropriate, just to invite their own awareness around that and their own practice.
Okay. I love that. That's something that's yeah, I love it that the copy editing and writing and
Mhm.
planning is happening in that discerning phase. I think that's definitely that's interesting. That's something that I myself will explore.
Yeah.
Work and cyclical alignment.
Yeah. And I never get it just right because there's that
Yeah.
inner voice too that's saying, is this okay? Is this okay for me to put my cycle so front and center? Because there's that old voice that learned, to
Yes.
perform and to get it right for my clients and do whatever they want, to be customer oriented. And so while it's what I intend and what I want others to practice, it's also um, just something to be mindful of, that it's not the natural default all the time as I step into more of this awareness.
Absolutely, yeah, and this concept of giving yourself a full week
Mhm.
down, beautiful. It's so important for us as women to take that time and space for ourselves,
Yeah.
um, especially in the society with so many demands on us. So, yeah,
Yeah. And society will push back too because that's not the norm. But then really doing it is an act of activism in a way. I think it's a way that we can
absolutely.
really powerfully and in a feminine way, um,
Yeah,
say what we need.
yeah. I totally agree with you on that one, that it is activism to live in cyclical alignment. The very act of tracking our cycles
Mm.
and trying to align with them and align with what our body's needing is an act of rebellion against the society that we live in and the kind of the work norms and societal norms that we have grown up with. So
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah. How do you think all this stuff maps onto sexuality?
Yes. Okay. So it's almost the same thing. The same conversation, I should say, as the one I had about menstruality and secrecy. Um,
Okay.
just as I learned from my mother and from society that menstruality was special but secret, I learned the same about sex. So that
Mhm.
and I think this is fairly common, if not, what I believe should happen. But I learned that my desire was to be kept undercover, that engaging with it and speaking about it must kind of be held in this hushed way or muted
Mhm.
somehow. And so, just by way of that subtle message, I then muted my own awareness of my
Yeah.
desire, of my sexual desire. Um, and don't I dare be too out loud about it, because there are sexual predators out there, or
Yeah.
pregnancy, or just judgment, and then it links back to just way back when women were exiled for being people who bleed or people who have strong sexual desires. So
Yeah.
it was never like spoken out loud as a explicit lesson, but I think it was the energy and the quality of the communication that I picked up on just by paying attention and reading what other women were doing and saying. And um, I learned once I was sexually active that having my period meant I wasn't pregnant. And
Mm.
so I sort of naturally linked my sexual engagement and my sexual pleasure with avoiding pregnancy. So there was always something to avoid um, or fear. And I
Yeah.
think that disempowers a woman's sexuality inherently. Um, and it happens just as early on as she dares to feel her sexuality, which usually correlates timing wise with menstruality, in
Yeah. Yeah.
generally
And
speaking.
it's so true that like in the school systems,
Mm,
it's still very, present, this one-sided view of pleasure and sexuality and from a very male lens.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Right. So this is a message to the school systems. We are coming for you.
mm-hmm.
I believe strongly that like the female pleasure optics are something that we need to speak to our daughters about, that we need to teach them about, because they will not learn this outside of their home anywhere. Right. Like it's
Yeah,
not going to be in their sex ed class. At best, in their sexual education classes, they are absolutely learning about their menstrual cycles in these terms that you keep mentioning of um, their reproductive abilities, and what that like that's what the focus is. Whereas even like with men, with boys, males, they mention the fact that they have erections and that they discharge, right? So there is this like this
normal.
pleasure, yeah, this normalcy for their pleasure, even present from that young age. But for girls, like there's no mention of a
No
female
mention.
orgasm and what that looks like and when and how that would happen.
Totally. There's a study I heard about in Glennon Doyle's Untamed book that she speaks about. It's her own research. Um, her kids there were boys and girls hanging out in the living room at her house, and she said, "Who's hungry?" And the boys looked within while continuing to play video games and said, "Nothing." And the girls looked up and looked around. "Am I hungry?" To
Mm,
see, is
wow.
anybody else saying yes? Because then I am. If everybody's saying no, then I'm saying no, I'm fine. And just this inherent, almost, we don't even notice that we look outside of ourselves to know what we want or what we
Yeah.
need. And boys get to look within themselves. And that's what I think menstruality also invites. A return to menstrual cycle awareness invites um, a return to our inner, innate,
Yes.
born with cycles and patterns, and that's a great place to start to look at all the other adventures we're going to have in life, be them sexual or
Yeah.
career or any.
Yeah, it's that return to the inner guidance and knowing that like all of the answers and solutions and knowledge are actually inside of you, right? And then the menstrual cycle as a type of container for that is how I view it, a container, a roadmap, if you will,
Brilliant.
for accessing that inner knowledge and letting that be what guides us as opposed to external cues.
Yeah, it's a treasure map.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. A treasure map. Great. Okay, well, my final question for you today is what does living in alignment mean to you? I know it means all of this, but can you sum this up? What does living in alignment with your cycle mean to you?
Um, well, honestly, for me, it means tracking it and knowing where I am.
Mhm.
Knowing where I am, if not to the day, at least to the phase, so that I can recall what this was like last cycle. Oh, I had really great sex at this time of the month. Okay, let me do that again. Or,
Yeah.
oh, I had zero patience in that meeting, so let me schedule it later. And it allows me to look to the recent past and plan for the future in a little bit more um, strategic way that has me in control, um, that is predictable, but that is also natural. It's not the sort of hard driven control. It's a body embodied sense of control. Um, Living in alignment also means speaking about it. Um,
Mhm.
Both of my kids refer casually to mommy's bleeding time now, in really accepting ways. And I think living in alignment really means being my message for other women. So it's not just that they and we, but I better be doing this at home too, and like practicing what I preach. I think that's the level of leadership that alignment practice really looks like for me.
I love that. Right. Thank you so much for your time today and all of your wonderful insight. If
Thank
anybody
you.
listening wants to get in touch with Laura or become more familiar with the work she's doing, or possibly download some of her ebooks that she has on her website, all of those links will be in the show notes. And Laura, do you want to just kind of mention your website so people can find
Sure.
you if they're just listening?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's my website is my name, laurakline-taylor.com. And it can be found just with a simple Google search. The Klein-Taylor is hyphenated, so Laura, Laura, Klein is Kline hyphen Taylor.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. It was great having you
Thank
here
you.
today.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
Bye bye.